My name is Cordelia Ravencroft, and I am 35 years old. If you have enjoyed this story of resilience and finding true family where you least expect it, please consider subscribing to our channel and giving this episode a like. Your support means everything to us. It was the 10th year since I had severed all ties with my family, and fate would have it that my brother and I crossed paths at our old alma mater. There he stood on the podium as an emerging star in international psychology, delivering his lecture to an auditorium full of eager students, while I quietly wheeled my coffee cart through the aisles, making deliveries to those same students. His voice carried across the hall with practiced confidence as he spoke passionately about his research. My journey into psychology began because of my sister Arabella, he declared, his voice resonating through the microphone. I made a solemn vow that I would dedicate my entire life, if necessary, to finding a cure for her depression. She is the driving force behind every study I conduct, every paper I publish, every moment I spend in this field. The audience erupted in thunderous applause, and I could see our parents in the front row, their faces glowing with pride as they nodded approvingly at their son's noble declaration. However, the moment their eyes caught sight of me maneuvering my coffee cart near the back of the auditorium, their expressions shifted dramatically. The warmth in their voices cooled to an uncomfortable dryness as they approached me after the lecture concluded. "Cordelia," my mother said, her voice catching slightly as she took in my uniform and the small cart I was pushing. "All these years you have been hiding from your father and me, and this is how you choose to live your life." My parents stood there, mouths slightly agape, as if searching for words that would not come. The silence stretched between us until I finally broke it, keeping my voice low and respectful despite the tension. "Excuse me, I need to get through. My son is waiting for me back at the coffee shop, and I really must return to him." This simple mention of my child seemed to ignite something explosive within them. Their reaction was immediate and fierce. "Living this way, what kind of decent man could you possibly have found?" my father demanded, his voice rising with each word. "You married some nobody and brought a child into this world without the means to properly raise him. What kind of future can you possibly give him?" My mother added, her tone dripping with disdain. "We are a family of scholars, Cordelia. Your father and I are both tenured professors at Ivy League institutions. You were once the state academic champion in mathematics. How could you willingly choose to waste your entire life in such mediocrity?" As I looked at my parents blocking the path in front of my delivery cart, I felt a strange mixture of bewilderment and exhaustion wash over me. These were the same people who, years ago, had personally escorted me to the police station, accusing me of putting rat poison in my sister's milk. They had stood by as I was detained and my reputation destroyed. Now that I had found peace in my simple life and built my own family, what more could they possibly want from me? Before I could formulate a response, the student affairs director came rushing over, apparently having witnessed what he assumed was some sort of altercation. He immediately grabbed my arm, as if apprehending a criminal. "Professor Ravencroft, I caught her," he announced triumphantly. "Is this the delivery person who was trying to steal from you? I told you we should never allow these questionable characters onto campus property. These lower-class people will do anything for money. Absolutely anything." The director continued his tirade, pointing his finger accusingly in my face. He clearly had no recollection that I had once been one of the school's most promising Harvard preparatory students, a source of pride for the entire institution. My father's face flushed deep red, as if someone had just slapped him publicly. The embarrassment was written clearly across his features as he struggled to find the right words. No, she is not a thief," he stammered, clearly flustered. She is. The words seemed to stick in his throat as he searched for an explanation that would not reveal the truth of our relationship. Finally, he managed to squeeze out 4 words through gritted teeth. "She is an acquaintance." The student affairs director released my arm, looking confused as his eyes darted between my parents and me, trying to understand the dynamics of this strange encounter. I bowed my head and began pushing my coffee-laden cart away from the scene as quickly as possible. My mother, however, was not ready to let me go. She hurried after me, her voice filled with frustration and disappointment. "Cordelia, I understand that you have been angry with us all these years, but that does not mean you should degrade yourself like this," she said, slightly out of breath from trying to keep up with my pace. "Come home with your father and me. We can find you a respectable position, something worthy of your education and abilities. You do not have to live like this, constantly looked down upon by others." I bent down to adjust the coffee cups on my cart, checking to ensure none had spilled during the commotion. As I straightened the wheels and prepared to continue on my way, I responded with quiet firmness. "That will not be necessary. I am perfectly content with my life as it is." My mother's frustration reached a boiling point at what she perceived as my stubborn refusal to see reason. She grabbed hold of my cart, preventing me from moving forward, and I could see she was preparing to launch into one of her lectures. However, her words were interrupted by my brother's voice, calling out from behind us. "Mother, what are you doing? We need to leave now. We promised Arabella we would be back in time for her birthday celebration. You know how upset she gets when we are late, and I cannot bear to see my little angel cry again." The affectionate tone in my brother's voice as he spoke about our sister came to an abrupt halt when he drew close enough to recognize me. This man, who had built his entire career on emotional control and psychological expertise, suddenly found himself struggling to maintain his composure. His eyes reddened as he looked at me, and his voice became strained. "Arabella's condition has not improved over the years," he said, almost as if he felt compelled to explain. "She still requires all of us to sing happy birthday to her, or she will cry for days afterward. She is not like you, someone who can manage on her own." There was only one thing I needed to know at that moment. "Are you finished?" I asked simply. My mother and father, who had joined us during this conversation, both froze at my words. The daughter they once knew would never have spoken to them with such detached indifference. In the past, I had been desperate to connect with them, to win their approval and attention. I had constantly shown them my mathematics competition awards and report cards, hoping for just a moment of recognition, even though they repeatedly tore up my achievements and scolded me for potentially upsetting my sister. Now, I simply pointed to my faded work apron. "This is the busy time at the coffee shop," I explained matter-of-factly. "Not only do we have many orders to fulfill, but I also need to clean and maintain the equipment to avoid any health department violations. I really must ask you to step aside." My parents continued to try to convince me to change my situation, but my brother placed restraining hands on their shoulders. Despite his obvious emotional turmoil, he managed to force a strained smile. "Father, Mother, perhaps we should not push this conversation right now. After all, we did arrive here quite unexpectedly." After all these years apart, my brother seemed to have developed a modicum of sensitivity to other people's feelings. He reached into his jacket and withdrew an elegant business card, offering it to me with both hands in a gesture of respect. "If you ever need anything, please do not hesitate to contact me," he said formally. I glanced at the card, noting the gold-embossed lettering that announced his credentials as an internationally certified psychological expert, along with the address of his office in a prestigious Manhattan high-rise. I smiled politely, but declined. "That will not be necessary. I am simply a coffee shop owner," I continued. "Besides, if Arabella were to discover that we had been in contact, I fear it might exacerbate her depression." That single statement was enough to make them all stop their attempts at persuasion. I gently but firmly moved my mother's hand away from my cart and began to push it toward the exit. Behind me, I could hear the sound of footsteps beginning to follow, but they came to an abrupt stop when a phone began ringing urgently. "Arabella, please stop crying, sweetheart," I heard my father's voice, filled with panic and desperation. "Daddy and Mommy's hearts are breaking to see you so upset," my mother added, her voice carrying the weight of years of practice at soothing my sister. "Your big brother brought you a special present all the way from Europe," my brother chimed in, his professional composure completely abandoned in favor of frantic concern. I continued pushing my cart away from them as the cold winter wind cut through my thin jacket, chilling me to the bone. On my way back to the shop, I stopped at the local grocery store to pick up some ingredients for dinner. When I finally returned to the coffee shop, my son immediately rushed into my arms. "Mommy, Adrian missed you so much," he exclaimed, wrapping his small arms around my waist. "It's cold outside, so Adrian wants to warm up Mommy's hands." He took my cold hands in his tiny ones, rubbing them gently while blowing warm breath on my fingers. His earnest expression, so much like his father's, never failed to bring a smile to my face. "Yay, Mommy is smiling now," he cheered. When Mommy came back earlier, she looked sad and worried, and it made Adrian scared. I was surprised that my mood had been so transparent and was about to reassure my son when my husband, who had closed the shop early to help me watch Adrian, pulled me into his arms for a thorough inspection. "What are you doing?" I asked, confused by his sudden intensity. My husband looked at me with genuine concern. "Some of the college students who came in earlier mentioned that you had some kind of trouble at the university today. They said you were confronted by Dr. Augustus Ravencroft, the tenured professor from the law school. According to what they overheard, he seemed determined not to let you leave until whatever issue he had with you was resolved." He paused, looking even more puzzled. "But that does not make sense to me. I have seen Dr. Ravencroft interviewed on CNN, and he seems like such a compassionate man, especially when he talks about his unwavering support for his daughter who struggles with severe depression. I cannot imagine how you could have possibly upset someone like that." I quietly extracted myself from his embrace and walked to the counter, where I began wiping down the surface with perhaps more force than was strictly necessary. "It does not matter now. Everything is in the past." He studied my face carefully for several moments before speaking again. "We are a family, you know." "Yes, I know," I replied, turning my attention to printing out the afternoon orders and beginning to prepare the coffee drinks. Without another word, my husband began helping me serve customers and handle the cash register. Throughout the rest of the afternoon, I noticed him braving the cold winter air multiple times to make deliveries that were normally my responsibility. Meanwhile, Adrian spread out his homework on one of the small tables and worked diligently on his assignments. Whenever he noticed that I looked tired, he would climb onto a small step stool and stretch his arms as high as they could reach. "Mommy works so hard, Adrian will give Mommy a shoulder massage." It was not until late that evening, when the last of the customers had departed and the shop had grown quiet, that I finally gave in to my husband's worried expressions and concerned glances. "All right," I said with a resigned sigh. "From the look of determination in their eyes today, I doubt they are going to give up easily. You would find out the truth sooner or later anyway." I took a deep breath before continuing. "Dr. Augustus Ravencroft is my father. He was also the man who had brought me into this world and raised me, only to later condemn me as a malicious and evil person who had attempted to poison her own sister." My husband shook his head frantically, unable to accept what I was telling him. I smiled sadly at his disbelief. What difference did it make whether he believed me or not? The truth had already been decided long ago. I simply continued speaking in a calm, measured tone, recounting the events that had shaped my life, From the moment of my birth, I had been nothing but a disappointment to my family. My parents and my brother formed a trio of genuine intellectual brilliance. My brother had been accepted into MIT at the age of 12 and had earned his doctorate in psychology by the time he turned 18, after which he prepared for advanced studies in Europe. Meanwhile, at the age of 8, I was still playing with dolls. My parents, alarmed by what they perceived as my lack of intellectual development, rushed me to specialists for comprehensive intelligence testing. The results confirmed their worst fears. I was perfectly average. From that day forward, I was essentially raised by our housekeeper, Maria. "Maria," I would ask repeatedly, "when are Mommy and Daddy coming to see me?" "Be patient, sweet Cordelia," she would reply gently. "Dr. Ravencroft and Dr. Ravencroft are very busy with their important work." This became the standard response that accompanied me through countless seasons of waiting. "But today is Cordelia's birthday," I would plead, wearing the paper crown that Maria had made for me and dressed in my favorite princess dress with the puffy skirt. "Why are not Mommy and Daddy here yet?" The little girl who waited so eagerly to be cherished by her parents would eventually dissolve into tears. "They do not want me anymore," I would sob. Finally, I would watch my family on television, learning that on my birthday they had been accompanying my brother to an international academic conference. When I saw my brother holding his shining trophy aloft and witnessed the radiant smiles on my parents' faces, a thought began to form in my young mind. Perhaps if Cordelia also had a trophy, Mommy and Daddy would spend time with her too. From that day forward, I locked away my beloved Barbie dolls in a storage box. When friends invited me to go to amusement parks, I forced myself to decline, no matter how much I wanted to go. At the age of 9, I began the grueling process of memorizing dictionaries and reading Shakespeare. But I was not a child prodigy by any means. I would often read until my head pounded and my vision blurred, reaching a point where I could not absorb another word. In my frustration, I would cry and hit my own head with my small fists. The physical pain was nothing compared to the ache in my heart from my parents' absence. When I officially started school, I purchased every available study guide and taught myself the entire curriculum a full semester in advance. While other students completed 3 practice exams, I would complete 10 or 15. The light in my bedroom never turned off before 3 in the morning. The day I finally achieved the top ranking in my grade, I excitedly called my parents to share the news. For the first time in years, they agreed to celebrate my birthday with me. "Cordelia, this year we will celebrate your birthday in Paris," my mother announced. "There happens to be an academic symposium taking place there, and you and your brother can both attend. It will be excellent preparation for your eventual entry into academic circles." For the first time in my life, I dressed in formal attire identical to theirs for a public event. My parents introduced me to their colleagues with obvious pride. I felt as though I was living in the most wonderful dream imaginable. This success motivated me to work even harder, and I became determined to maintain my position in my parents' affections. When they asked me to help care for my younger sister, I agreed without hesitation. "Your sister is not as gifted as you are," my mother explained. "She is just an ordinary little girl. She is very sensitive and needs extra love and attention," my father added. The irony was not lost on me. I too had once been an ordinary child, but that had never earned me their patience or understanding. Why had they treated me so differently? I pushed down these uncomfortable feelings and convinced myself that perhaps it was better this way. My sister could enjoy the simple, happy childhood that had been denied to me. "Do not worry, Mom and Dad. I will take care of everything," I promised them. That single promise became the beginning of my descent into a living nightmare. Because I was expected to be understanding and mature, when my sister demanded that I play with her, I had to abandon my homework and entertain her until 10 o'clock at night. My parents saw nothing wrong with this arrangement. Cordelia, you should be like your brother, a natural genius. Learning should be effortless for someone with your abilities. They could not see the tremendous effort I put forth every single day. I would stay up until the early hours of the morning completing my studies, only to be awakened at dawn by the sound of my sister practicing her tap dancing in the room adjacent to mine. When I showed any signs of fatigue or irritation, my parents would defend her behavior. Children are naturally energetic and playful. She should not have to become as serious and grim as you, constantly showing off your academic achievements. The words felt like a knife twisting in my chest, but worse was yet to come. My parents informed me that I would need to move to the guest room because they wanted to knock down the wall between our rooms to give my sister more space. My husband could no longer contain his anger as he listened to my story. So when you were ordinary, they disliked you, but once you became exceptional, they decided they preferred ordinary children after all. They were playing games with your emotions, he said furiously. And after you treated your sister so well, did she not stand up for you even once? I shook my head sadly. With my parents' support, my sister only became more demanding and manipulative. She would sneak into my room and tear up my study notes, then run crying to our parents, claiming that I had destroyed my own work in anger and was trying to blame her. When I made special smoothies to try to win her favor, she would throw rocks and weeds into them, then scream that I was trying to get revenge on her. During power outages caused by my exhaustion-induced mistakes, she would point to the severed electrical cords and tearfully tell our parents that I had cut them in a fit of rage. Initially, my parents would give me subtle warnings about my behavior. Academic achievement is not the only thing that matters, they would say. A person's character is equally important. As these incidents multiplied, they became convinced that I was a bully who enjoyed tormenting my innocent little sister. After all, how could such a young child be capable of such elaborate lies? My brother, still a passionate teenager at the time, was particularly harsh in his criticism. "You are just jealous because you cannot stand to see us treat Arabella with love," he would say coldly. "We are going to give her everything good in life, and there is nothing you can do about it. No one will ever love you the way we love her." Every time I tried to defend myself, my sister would interrupt with her sobbing and wailing. My parents would then scold me for frightening her, while my usually distant brother would make funny faces and silly voices to cheer her up. Meanwhile, I stood alone and ignored, treated like a piece of furniture. My status in the family continued to deteriorate until I felt like an unwelcome stranger in my own home. Whenever I entered a room where the rest of the family was engaged in pleasant conversation, they would fall silent, as if an intruder had invaded their private space. During my brother's birthday celebration, when my sister announced that she wanted to sing a special song for him, I gathered the courage to offer to accompany her on the violin. My sister seemed delighted by the suggestion and even offered to walk upstairs with me to retrieve my instrument. But as soon as we reached the second-floor hallway, she disappeared. I called out for her frantically, but my search was interrupted by the vicious slap my father delivered across my face. "Stop with the acting!" he roared. "You are nothing but a rotten seed! Tell me right now where you have hidden Arabella." I held my bleeding lip and cried out that I had done nothing wrong. Suddenly, I felt excruciating pain in my knee as my brother kicked me to the ground, and I could see he was preparing to deliver another blow. "You really will not confess until you are in your coffin. Tonight we are going to teach you a lesson you will never forget." My mother grabbed me by my hair, still refusing to tell the truth. "Then you can stay locked up until you decide to be honest. You will not eat a single bite until you confess, you evil little monster." She threw me violently into my room, not noticing that my head struck the wall as I fell. My body slid down the wall and crumpled to the floor. Stars exploded across my vision as I felt warm liquid trickling from my forehead. My body grew cold, starting from my fingertips and spreading inward until I felt as though I was freezing to death. As my consciousness began to fade, I could hear my sister crying in the distance. "Daddy, Mommy, why does my big sister hate me so much?" she wailed. "She always makes me feel bad about my grades, and just now she called me worthless and said she was going to hold me underwater in the swimming pool until I drowned. I was so scared that I ran away and hid." My parents' hearts broke for their precious daughter. "Our darling Arabella has suffered so much. We will not let that evil child get away with this. We will make her kneel down and apologize to you properly." My brother shouted that he wanted to kick me a few more times to make sure I learned my lesson. I struggled to crawl to the locked door, desperate to explain what had really happened, but the pain was so intense that I could not speak. All I could do was scratch at the door until my fingernails split and bled. On the other side of that door, I could hear my parents speaking to my sister in the most gentle, loving tones. "Come on, little princess. Let Daddy and Mommy take you out for a nice dinner." Then, raising their voices so I could hear them clearly, they added, "From now on, bullies who hurt other people will be punished. We are going to reward the sweetest, most well-behaved little girl." My tears flowed endlessly. When I heard the front door slam shut, the physical and emotional pain became unbearable. The darkness and silence seemed to swallow me whole, as if I had been buried alive. I continued clawing at the door until my hands were covered in blood, and then I lost consciousness entirely. In my fevered dreams, I heard screaming voices. "Cordelia, hold on! Stay with us! Call an ambulance! Someone call an ambulance right now!" At the hospital, even the doctors were moved to pity by my condition. "This child has been chronically sleep-deprived and overworked for an extended period," the attending physician explained. "Her body was already in a weakened state, and now she has suffered a severe concussion. She also has fractures in her knee and thigh bone." However, my parents barely listened to the medical explanation because my sister had begun crying hysterically. "Big sister, please do not kill me," she screamed. "Arabella promises to be a good girl and stay hidden, so I will not compete with you for Mommy and Daddy's attention anymore." My brother stormed into the room and threw a piece of paper at my face. It was a psychiatric evaluation declaring my sister to be suffering from severe depression, and he blamed me entirely for her condition. "You evil monster! You must be so pleased with yourself," he snarled. "You have always shown off your good grades to make Arabella feel inferior and worthless. As far as we are concerned, you are no better than a wild animal." Seeing the hatred and disgust in my parents' eyes, I turned my head away and closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face. I could not understand why everyone in the world had abandoned me. After this incident, they treated me like a dangerous criminal, keeping me under constant surveillance while they relocated to Los Angeles with my sister. Before they left, my parents made it clear that they felt they were being extremely generous. "This money is more than enough to pay for your college education," my father said, tossing an envelope at me. "We hope you will use this time to get a proper education and correct your vicious, evil nature. Consider this payment for a hired killer to leave Arabella alone," my mother added coldly. I was still recovering from my injuries when they delivered this final blow. As I stood alone in our empty house, reading their cruel words while leaning on my crutches, the bandages on my head still stained with blood, the pain in my skull throbbed with each heartbeat. In the years that followed, I threw myself into my studies with desperate intensity. I became known throughout the state as a dedicated scholar, but no one knew that I continued studying even during my subway commutes. As I matured, I was recognized as both beautiful and brilliant. Still, no one knew that I woke up before dawn every day to practice yoga and go running in order to maintain my healthy, slender figure. Eventually, people began pairing me romantically with the most popular student in school. We had made plans to attend Harvard University together. When our dreams became reality and we were both accepted, I felt as though my life was finally taking a positive turn. I could not resist taking a photograph with my boyfriend and posting it on social media. To my amazement, my parents, whom I had not heard from in years, sent me congratulations. "Harvard University is quite an achievement," my father wrote. "Being accepted by an Ivy League institution suggests that you have matured considerably over these past few years." Despite my better judgment, and although I knew I should remain aloof, I found myself excitedly preparing an elaborate feast for their return visit. I even prepared a warm glass of milk for my sister to help settle her stomach before the meal. Once again, I had made a terrible mistake. When my sister began trembling and crying, claiming that she had witnessed me secretly adding rat poison to her drink, I knew that my life was over. My own parents personally escorted me to the police station. "We thought we could reconcile with you," my father said grimly, "but you do not deserve our forgiveness. This time, you must face the consequences of your actions," my mother added. I completely broke down. I screamed and demanded to know why my sister was so cruel, how she could so callously destroy my future without any remorse. But she simply cowered against my brother like a delicate flower, trembling with apparent fear. "Big sister, I want to ask you the same question," she whispered. "Why have you always wanted to kill me?" Before I could respond, my father struck me with such force that I collapsed to the ground. "How dare you continue to threaten your sister, you ungrateful wretch!" My mother grabbed one of my legs and began dragging me toward their car like a dead animal. "Save your explanations for the police, you criminal. From this day forward, you are no longer our daughter. You are worse than a pig or a dog." What followed was a coordinated assault on my character and future. My father, a respected professor of pharmacology, provided expert chemical analysis of the alleged evidence. My mother, a distinguished law professor, methodically listed every accusation against me. Together, they were determined to see me imprisoned for attempted murder. Although the evidence was ultimately deemed insufficient and I was only detained for several days, the damage was irreversible. I was expelled from the university, my reputation was destroyed, and my boyfriend ended our relationship. Friends and acquaintances distanced themselves from me, and I was thrown out of my family home. Without a degree or any prospects, I was forced to work menial jobs just to survive, leaving me in a worse position than when I had started. Meanwhile, my family traveled extensively and lived luxuriously, treating me as though I had died. Now, in the quiet of our coffee shop, my husband was weeping openly with heartbreak and rage. "They are absolutely despicable," he cried. "This was about your entire future. How could they not even ask you for your side of the story? They were supposed to be your own parents." This anguished cry seemed to hang in the air, and when I looked up, I was shocked to see that my parents were standing at our counter. I had no idea how much of our conversation they had overheard, but my father looked deeply uncomfortable as he spoke. "Cordelia, about what happened all those years ago, we have had time to think, and we realize that perhaps we acted somewhat hastily." I stared at them with cold indifference. And then what? The damage had already been done. Did they think time could somehow reverse itself? My father stumbled over his words as he attempted to explain himself. "The truth is, we just wanted you to learn a lesson. Yes, you were expelled from school, but your mother and I always believed that someone as exceptional as you had been would be able to succeed on your own in the world. We never imagined that you would end up like this." He gestured around our small coffee shop, which was not even as large as the laundry room in our former family home. pain flickered in his eyes. "Cordelia, you should not be living like this. Being angry with your family does not mean you should punish yourself this way. We have gotten over our anger years ago. All it would take is one phone call from you and your father and I would forgive everything. We have already made plans. Since you were expelled, we could send you to Oxford University for graduate study. We have connections there, and we could use our influence to help you obtain a respectable position." My mother dabbed at her eyes, suddenly taking on the appearance of a caring, nurturing parent. "But we never expected that you would stop caring about your career entirely. We certainly never imagined that you would be so careless about the most important decisions in your life. You just settled for some random person from the lower classes and married him." She looked at my husband with obvious disgust and contempt. My anger flared beyond my control. "Enough!" I shouted at her for the first time in my life, ignoring her shocked expression as I continued. "What exactly are you complaining about? I do not even want to expose your hypocrisy. You are bothered because you think having a daughter like me reflects poorly on you now, are you not? If you cannot stand to look at me, then do not look. Get out of here, stay far away from me." They had hurt me in the past, and I had been able to tell myself that it was over and I could move on. But I would never allow them to destroy the family I had built for myself now. This was my absolute boundary. My parents' faces went pale, and 1,000 words seemed to dissolve into broken sobs caught in their throats. My brother stepped forward with a sigh. "I apologize. We should not have come here without invitation and disturbed your peace." "Then why do you not leave?" my husband said, clenching his fists and making no effort to hide his hostility. After hearing about what I had endured, he wanted nothing more than to physically attack them. However, my brother acted as though my husband was invisible, as if he were too insignificant to acknowledge. He spoke only to me, his tone condescending and superior. "Cordelia, associating with people like this is truly beneath you. Actually, we came here tonight to reconcile with you and bring you home, back to where you truly belong. Arabella heard about your situation and said she wants to come personally to welcome her big sister home. We decided there was no point in waiting any longer. Allowing you to remain here for even one more moment would be torture for all of us." I was amazed by their audacity. How could they continue to make decisions about my life without my input? When they decided I was guilty, they destroyed my education, reputation, and romantic relationship. Now that they had decided I needed to be rescued, they wanted to tear apart the happy family I had built. When would they finally leave me alone? I am perfectly happy with my life as it is. I do not need or want any changes. Please leave. I need to close the shop. I was making every effort to control my temper, but at that moment my sister spoke up with tears in her eyes. "Big sister, I know you are still angry with me after all these years, but I was just a little child then. When I realized you wanted to kill me, I was terrified and had to ask the adults for help. Now, no matter how you treat me, I will not tell anyone about it. I can endure whatever you do to me." Her performance was so manipulative that I almost laughed out loud. What a perfect example of false innocence and calculated manipulation. My husband could not contain his sarcasm any longer. "Drop the innocent act. Only fools would believe this performance. And you call yourselves a family of scholars. You are nothing but a nest of stupid and evil people. The only reason Cordelia never fit in with you is because she is far too good for you. She emerged from the mud without being stained by it." My parents' faces cycled through various shades of red and white as they absorbed this verbal assault. As tenured professors at prestigious Ivy League institutions, they were accustomed to universal respect and deference. This was the first time in their lives that someone they considered to be from the lower classes had spoken to them with such contempt. My mother immediately pointed her finger at my husband's face and shrieked, "What do you think you are? If it were not for my daughter, you would never have had the opportunity to speak to people like us. Get out. If you had any sense of decency, you would leave my daughter alone. Do you really think you are worthy of her? Our family will never recognize your marriage." Before my husband could respond, my son suddenly opened his eyes in my arms, broke free, and rushed to confront my parents. "You cannot bully my daddy and mommy," he shouted bravely. "Adrian heard everything. When mommy was little, you did not take care of her, and when she grew up, you hit her. You are all bad people." I was shocked to realize that my child had been awake and listening. I had assumed he was sleeping soundly when I told my story. I had no idea how much he had understood, but there he was, swinging his tiny fists and hitting my mother's knees with all his might. Of course, his blows were completely harmless, but they made my parents even more uncomfortable. "Adrian, that is your name, is it not? Please stop hitting us. We are your grandfather and grandmother," my father said awkwardly. "Why will this child not listen to reason?" my mother complained. "Cordelia, when you were his age, you were much more obedient. The housekeeper used to tell us that you would sit quietly for hours reciting poetry. Even now, after all these years, my parents could not resist praising my former compliance and eagerness to please. I found their words deeply sad. What they had loved was not me, but the desperate, people-pleasing version of myself I had created to try to win their approval. They would never love an ordinary version of me the way they loved my ordinary sister. Some people are simply born into different circumstances and treated differently from the very beginning. I walked over and picked up Adrian in my arms. "Stop hitting them, sweetheart. You will dirty your hands." My parents' breathing seemed to stop for a moment. Their eyes filled with a deep sadness, and they looked at me with disbelief. I continued coldly. "From now on, Adrian, I want you to treat these people as if they do not exist. Do not pay any attention to them, all right?" My husband, still seething with anger on my behalf, enthusiastically supported my decision. "That is right. Listen to your mother. Remember that everything mommy tells you is correct, and our most important job is to make sure she is happy all the time. When we see garbage on the street, we do not need to step on it and dirty our shoes. If garbage tries to bother us, we should go find a police officer." Adrian nodded solemnly, though I was not sure he completely understood. Then, with what might have been intentional or accidental timing, he looked directly at Arabella and said clearly, "Oh, I remember now. Garbage." My sister could not tolerate this humiliation and immediately began her usual manipulation tactics. "Big sister, I have always been patient when you got good grades and used them to make me feel bad, calling me worthless and stupid," she said in a trembling voice. "But how can you teach your child to be disrespectful to his elders and look down on me? How will I ever be able to show my face again?" She bit her lip and closed her eyes dramatically, swaying backward as if she were about to faint from the emotional trauma. My brother quickly moved to support her. My parents were furious and immediately began berating me. "After all these years, why have you not changed your terrible attitude? Do you want to torment your sister to death before you will be satisfied? This is what happens when you associate with uncultured, low-class people. You become just like them. Uneducated, classless trash. The children they raise are just as crude and ill-mannered." My rage reached a boiling point. They could oppress and hurt me, but I would not allow them to insult my child. After years of struggling in the real world, I was no longer the timid, shy girl who had allowed them to manipulate and control her like a puppet. I immediately began shouting at the top of my lungs, addressing the entire street. "Everyone come and see. Come and look. These are the tenured Ivy League professors, Dr. Augustus Ravencroft and Dr. Celeste Ravencroft. They have been on CNN. Hurry up and take pictures and videos. This will definitely get attention online. They talk about loving children and never giving up on their daughter even though she has depression, but here they are bullying my little boy. They are hypocrites and frauds. Look at them grabbing and threatening to hit a small child. Sure enough, the spectacle of Ivy League professors allegedly attacking a child was sensational enough to draw a crowd. Men and women of all ages surrounded us, already pulling out their phones to record everything. My parents, who had always been obsessed with their reputations and public image, could not handle this kind of attention. They backed away frantically, looking at me with profound disappointment. "How did you develop such a vulgar, crude personality?" my mother demanded. I laughed bitterly. "When I was abandoned by you like an orphan, I had to learn to be tough and aggressive, or I would have been completely destroyed by now. I have you to thank for that lesson." Guilt flickered across their faces once again, but before they could respond, I pointed directly at Arabella and spoke with venom. "In the future, keep her far away from me and tell her to stop her pathetic performances. She is a disgusting, manipulative creature, and I do not want her corrupting my son Adrian's innocent eyes." Then I turned my attention to my brother. "Speaking of which, you are an internationally renowned psychological expert now, are you not? Surely you can tell when someone is putting on an act. Why do you not have her and me recount the events from all those years ago, and you can observe us both in real time to determine who is lying?" Arabella's eyelids began to tremble unnaturally. My brother noticed this telltale sign, but he simply sighed deeply. "Cordelia, she has suffered tremendously over these years as well." I laughed harshly. "Get out!" My brother nodded slowly. "You need some time to calm down." He gestured for my parents to follow him as they prepared to leave, but he had one final question for my husband. "I hope you will think carefully about this situation. Compared to what our family can offer her, what good can you possibly bring to Cordelia by continuing to keep her tied down?" That night, my husband tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. He was so transparent and easy to read. "Honey, maybe we should get divorced," he finally said. "I do not want to hold you back. They said they could send you to Oxford for advanced study. You could have a much better future instead of being stuck in this old house with me. Adrian is a good kid, and I know he would want what is best for his mother too. I would keep him with me and never remarry. When he grows up, he would still call you Mommy." As my husband became more invested in this idea, he began crying uncontrollably. I handed him a tissue. "All right, wipe your face. You woke me up from a perfectly good dream with all your noise." This made him even more distraught. "I am so sorry, honey. Even when we are about to separate, I am still making you unhappy. I am such a terrible person." I could not help but laugh at this lovable fool. "I have not said anything about separating yet, but you have already planned out our entire future apart. Tell me honestly, have you been wanting to get rid of me for a while now?" My husband looked absolutely stricken and terrified. "I would never. I was even planning to give you everything in the divorce. That way, even if your parents change their minds again, you would have enough money to stand on your own. I would wait for you forever if you wanted to come back to me, and if you decided not to, I would just wish you happiness." I felt my heart warm as I pulled my husband into my arms. "You silly man, if you give me everything in a divorce, what would you and Adrian live on?" "Do not worry, I am never going back to them." Seeing my husband's instant relief followed immediately by renewed concern and his obvious intention to try to persuade me otherwise, I covered his mouth with my hand. "You do not need to convince me. You could never understand that family better than I do. If I went back there, I could never be myself. I would only be a clay sculpture, molded and shaped according to their whims, forced to become whatever they wanted me to be. I would never be happy. That single statement was enough to make my husband stand firmly by my side. Then I support you completely, honey. No matter what happened, he always prioritized my happiness above everything else. With this weight lifted from his mind, he quickly returned to his cheerful self and excitedly told me about his upcoming promotion and raise, promising that he would make sure our life together got better and better. Our peaceful, warm days continued for several more weeks, but unfortunately, my family returned to harass us again. Cordelia, your sister says she wants to try the coffee you make. Just treat us like ordinary customers, please do not turn us away. My parents were attempting a different strategy this time, hoping to gradually rebuild our relationship, but I could see the calculating look in my sister's eyes as she examined our coffee equipment, and I knew immediately that she was planning something malicious. I am warning you, do not even think about pulling the same stunt you did years ago, claiming that I poisoned something. We have security cameras here. You cannot poison anything, and do not think about trying to revive the old accusations that I am a would-be murderer using internet harassment to get people to boycott my business. If you do that, my shop will be forced to close, and I will simply have to go home and rely on my parents for support. I am sure they would be eager to compensate me for their years of neglect. If that happens, your position as the spoiled little princess might not be as secure as it is now. My sister's expression darkened immediately. She suddenly claimed that she felt unwell and asked my parents to take her home right away. See? Guilty conscience. My parents still tried to defend her. Cordelia, how can you make such accusations against your sister? What is wrong with that? You cannot stand it, I replied. I picked up my cleaning rag and began sweeping all the dust and debris on the counter in their direction. Then get out. You are the ones who keep forcing yourselves on me. How shameless. I thought that my parents, being people who cared so much about their dignity and reputation, would stop coming around after being humiliated like this a few more times. However, I had not anticipated that they would turn their attention to Adrian. One day, outside his school, they attempted to get him into their car. We are the child's grandparents, and we just want to take him to Disney World, they explained to anyone who asked. We never had the chance to spend time with you when you were small, and we just want to make up for that now. Your grandmother and I have been thinking that Adrian should transfer to a private school. If you want to succeed in life, you need to start building a strong foundation early. I told them to stop immediately. As I held Adrian tightly in my arms, I felt genuinely terrified. If my child fell into their hands, he would become just another puppet, driven to madness by their impossible expectations. But my parents were not going to give up easily. Their obsessive need to control everything had made them accustomed to arranging every aspect of my life according to their preferences. What could I possibly do to make them back off, even if it meant forcing them to? I spent a month agonizing over this problem. Then someone I never would have expected reached out to me voluntarily. It was my first love, Sebastian Hawthorne. My husband and I met with him together at a coffee shop. Now that we were all adults with life experience, we could approach this meeting with maturity and rationality. Well, except for my husband, he seemed to view Sebastian as a potential threat. I had to reassure him privately that Sebastian was now a successful international businessman who could have any woman he wanted. The idea that he would be interested in reconnecting with me romantically was pure fantasy. So, what is this about? I asked directly. I am not going to flatter myself by thinking that you traveled all this way just to catch up with me. Sebastian smiled and admitted his ulterior motives immediately. As it happens, my family has opened a new business venture here, so the timing worked out. To be honest, I was not sure you would even want to see me again. I told him that I understood his position and that I had gotten over any resentment I might have felt. The reality was that successful relationships required compatibility in multiple areas, and we simply had not been well suited for each other. His next statement confirmed my assessment. I am glad you see it that way. Even now, I believe that our decision to break up was the right one. I made the choice that was best for my own interests. I quietly squeezed my husband's hand. So you see, I thought to myself, this is why I am here with my husband now, and everything worked out for the best. Sebastian continued in his casual conversational tone. I admit that I am a selfish person. And I also know that if our situations had been reversed and I had been the one falsely accused, Cordelia, you never would have abandoned me. He smiled slightly. I probably lost the best partner I could have had in this lifetime, the one person who would have been completely devoted to me. But as I said, I am very selfish. When I think about the fact that someone caused me to lose what should have been mine by rights, I will not let them get away with it if I have the power to do something about it. What Sebastian told me next revealed a truth so disgusting that it made me feel physically ill. It turned out that after I had posted that photo of Sebastian and myself on social media years ago, my sister had developed a crush on him. She was attracted to his handsome appearance and his obvious intelligence and success. She resented the fact that I was equally impressive and accomplished, so she had manipulated our parents into returning to the United States and had deliberately framed me, destroying my reputation and prospects. Afterward, she had somehow obtained Sebastian's contact information and pursued him relentlessly. All of this information had come from my sister herself during a drunken conversation she had initiated with Sebastian. The root cause of everything that had happened was this. Growing up in a family of genuinely brilliant people had made her feel constantly inadequate and suffocated. Seeing that I, who had started out as ordinary as she was, had managed to achieve success through hard work made her feel even more resentful and unbalanced. That was why she had sabotaged my studies from the very beginning. She wanted to see me fall into the same pit of mediocrity where she felt trapped. Sebastian had saved all of these chat records and voice messages, and he now forwarded them all to me. I was deeply grateful to him, regardless of his motivations. Then it is time for me to reclaim the justice I deserve. With Sebastian's help, the truth about my sister's frame-up quickly spread across every major social media platform. The fact that my parents were tenured professors at Ivy League institutions and that my brother was an internationally renowned psychologist only added to the sensational nature of the story. When people learned that they had used their professional expertise to try to send their own daughter to prison, the public outrage was overwhelming. The internet seemed ready to drown them in criticism and condemnation. These are monsters in human form. How could anyone be this biased toward one child? Talented but completely lacking in moral character. Under the intense pressure of public scrutiny, my parents' and brother's careers in the United States were completely destroyed, and my sister's mental health deteriorated even further, leaving them overwhelmed and desperate. Despite all their precautions, my sister managed to climb onto a balcony, apparently intending to threaten suicide as another manipulative gesture. Unfortunately for her, she lost her footing and actually fell, resulting in severe spinal injuries that left her paralyzed. Exhausted and overwhelmed, my family finally decided to take my sister to Europe for long-term medical care, far away from the controversy and scandal. The day before they left, my parents called me one last time. "Cordelia, we are leaving tomorrow. Could we possibly see you one more time? This might be our last chance to speak in this lifetime." I hung up the phone while they were still speaking through their tears. I did not have time for their drama. I had plans to take my husband and son to an amusement park to ride roller coasters. I had my own family to think about now.